It's just this build-up of emotion that takes place, and in his case, sadly, the headphones suffered. Where does this race rank as the most craziest that you've been a part of? But both of us have been around 20 years in the sport with a travelling role, and this entire weekend, so when you include qualifying, which was intense and reasonably complicated, and the race, which was very, very unpredictable, full of incidents, as you saw, from start to finish, and really difficult to stay on top of as a team, I think this might be the highest. And that includes wet races where it's turned wet in the last few laps. It's just the intensity from start to finish of this entire weekend was incredible.
The issue we had with Valtteri at the end of the first qualifying that stopped the car was a fuel system problem, and it was struggling to pick up fuel at the very low levels. So through the remainder of qualifying, we just had to run more fuel so that we didn't get into that region.
Why did we double stack with Lewis and Valtteri at that first safety car? We'd highlighted before the race that the hard tyre was just the best tyre, and we'll go on to answer questions on that a little bit later on. But that tyre could do 40 laps of the race without question. And with the safety car appearing when it did on that early lap, you can go to the end of the race. You don't have to incur another pit stop loss. There was going to be nearly zero degradation on that tyre. So it made absolute sense to stop, unless you thought there was going to be a red flag. But that's gambling. We've done that in the past where it's very clear that there's definite barrier damage. But in this particular circumstance, it was borderline or looked as though the barrier was going to be okay and the car could be cleared. So in that, what you do is make sure you stop your car. Had the red flag not come out, I'm fairly sure Verstappen would never have been able to pull away from our two drivers, or perhaps even some of the other drivers like Leclerc that had stopped and also fitted that hard tyre. He would have struggled. That medium tyre would have just degraded, and with more and more incidents and more safety cars that perhaps would have bunched the pack, he may have suffered a little bit more as the result of it.
What happened with the radio communication when Max was supposed to give the place back? Well, Red Bull talking to Michael Masi, the race director, through that period, and he was advising them to give the position up. Now, Michael Masi then spoke to Ron Meadows, our sporting director, and at the point that conversation was occurring was the point that Max braked to let Lewis go by. So the problem was that we didn't have any time to actually get the message to Lewis, which was why it caught him by surprise. He wasn't expecting Max to slow down on the straight.
Did you expect Max's mediums to drop off to the extent that they did before the end of the race? The short answer is yes. Perhaps that was a little bit more accelerated, just simply because there was a number of VSC periods that would have helped his medium tyre. But the reason why we fitted hard, not just once, but twice at that restart, even in a used state, was that medium tyre was suffering. It was suffering from more degradation. It wasn't as fast a tyre as the hard, which is unusual because that was from the get-go. Almost lap one, the hard was faster. And then you're using the tyres a lot more rapidly, so especially on the front right and on the rear axle as well. You could see that drop not just with Verstappen towards the end of the race with about 7-8 laps to go, but also with a number of cars really in the midfield. For example, Ricciardo, once Valtteri was through, dropped off quite dramatically. And Valtteri did a very, very good job on his medium tyre in order to keep going and just get through Esteban on the last lap.
How big was the damage on Lewis's car? Well, the total loss of downforce was around 1/4 of a second, but in addition, because you've lost it from the front axle, the car's understeering. So estimates are that it's around 0.35 of a second total. Now, he was still able to get the fastest lap, but there are a few things that worked in his favour. The medium runners had dropped off, the hard runners were by and large slower cars. Max didn't decide to take a new tyre and go for fastest lap himself. And ultimately, Lewis was quick and the car was fast anyway. So it was a very good effort to get that, and a vital point that we can carry into this weekend in Abu Dhabi.
How many pairs of headphones did Toto get through this weekend? I don't think one of them is here in Abu Dhabi with us. I think it still remains in fairly substantial bits in Jeddah, but just one headset. But conversely, the passion and emotion that he's feeling, I'm sure, is the same as all of you are feeling at home, and definitely the same as we're feeling at the track. It's just this build-up of emotion that takes place, and in his case, sadly, the headphones suffered.
How high did our heart rates get? The honest answer is we don't know because we don't measure it. But there are points where you do sort of feel the excitement and the intensity, and you can feel your heart racing like the race start. But one of the key things on the pit wall is we've got to stay calm, keep everyone calm, because trying to make decisions under pressure is a lot easier if you're thinking clearly, and we can all have nice, relaxing conversations about what to do.
How's the team feeling going into the title decider? Every race we approach one by one. You don't get carried away with where you're ahead or behind in the championship. You approach every race as though they're a standalone event to a certain extent. We need to perform as well as we can here. The difference is obviously this is the last one in a sequence that started many, many months ago. The team's relaxed. Everyone I've spoken to so far is in a good state of mind. We know that we have to perform, we have to deliver a car on track, and the drivers have to perform. And ultimately, a certain amount of luck or bad luck may fall our way. Just speaking from my own side, you know how you can either win or lose this mathematically, but that can't come into the equation anymore. You can't think about that or get caught about whether you're second or third or fourth or 10th. You just need to approach every weekend as though you need to deliver the maximum amount possible. And that's how we're going into this one.
From the engineering side, this is very much a normal week for us. So we've got some meetings where we're talking about the car specification, making sure that everything's ready. But it's the normal build-up, and the key focus really is on the performance side, because this title's likely going to be decided by whoever wins the race. We need to make sure that the car will work on the new modifications of the Abu Dhabi circuit. So we've been doing work in the simulator, and that work's going on into this week as well. But really it's just about trying to land the right setup in FP1 and then allow Lewis and Valtteri just to develop the car from there, hopefully fast enough for pole position, hopefully fast enough to win the race. Thank you for all your questions. Now, we'll be back in a week's time to answer your questions from the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix.
Yes.
Thank you, sorry about that.
That was a good one. It got better and better. Oh, it's lovely.
Thank you.